This week on Quality Digest Live, we explore the link between consumer desires and design decisions.
That's right, plus the 3 kinds of CEOs. That and more when we come back.
This week's episode of Quality Digest Live is sponsored by the Baldrige Collaborative Assessment. Work side by side with experts to assess your organization and get customizable, immediate feedback with minimal preparation. Learn more today at nist.gov/Baldrige.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for September 26, 2014. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Dirk Ducharme, editor-in-chief. Did you know that during the first 6 months of 2014, U.S. automakers hit a record high number of recalls, reaching almost 40 million vehicles? That's just in the first 6 months, according to NBC News and some other sources. During the last 5 years, 12 million vehicles have been recalled for a faulty airbag inflator, affecting nearly every major automaker. So really not so good. And all of us know this, and there's a lot of other information in the news as well related to the automakers. But here are 6 tips that automakers, or anyone for that matter, should consider if they want to improve their quality. And these were given to us by Michael Lyle, president and CEO of Infinity QS, one of this year's sponsors of the AIAG Quality Summit. That's the used to be called the Automotive Industry Action Group. I think they just go by that acronym anyway. But anyway, they're the big automotive group. So here's 6 tips for making your quality much better. First, create a culture of quality. This one we talk about all the time. We all know this is pretty common sense. Quality departments and executive management should create a culture where suggestions for improvements, really large or small, are welcome and praised. Okay, number 2, work with your suppliers. It's a different economy now than it used to be 20 years ago. It's global. So if you work with your suppliers, this really enables you to understand your suppliers' internal processes and offer ways to improve the quality of the component parts so that they can better meet your standards. In order to do this, number 3, use technology to connect to your supply chain. With a global supply chain, it has become increasingly difficult to know what is happening at each facility or each of your suppliers. The cloud or mobile devices help connect you to the supply chain, making it possible for operators and inspectors within a manufacturer's facility or a supplier to input data from anywhere using a mobile device. So again, this gives you greater visibility. Excuse me. Number 4, demand more than an inspection report. Again, this is the visibility part. You don't need just to rely on an inspection report. Manufacturers need visibility into supplier operations to understand what's occurring within the manufacturing processes in real time. Real-time visibility created through cloud-based quality systems offers a complete view of supplier operations, removing the need to reinspect incoming parts. So basically what this is talking about is rather than wait for an inspection report to come in and then decide whether you're going to entrust it or not, it's possible now with technology to have a real-time sense of what is actually going on. So you don't really need to depend so much on inspection reports. Number 5, leverage manufacturing intelligence. Using advanced data analysis software, it's possible to compare site to site or supplier to supplier, identifying areas for improvement. If one facility is running an identical process significantly more efficiently than the other, then maybe that information should be shared with the second site to enable process improvement. And finally, number 6, drill down through data to reduce warranty claims and recalls. If a product was returned within the warranty period because of a defective part, quality software can and should be used to identify whether the return was due to a supplier or a material inconsistency. With the source of the issue identified, enterprises can put measures in place to prevent the same issues in the future. So basically what we're talking about here, what Infinity QS is talking about, and obviously they're a provider of software, so they got a dog in the show, as they say. But really what they're talking about is a lot of the technology, both hardware and software, allow you to really have a much better view into your own facilities and into your suppliers, to really keep a better idea of what's going on in terms of the whole process from cradle to grave. And you should be able to leverage that in order to give you a much better feel for how your suppliers are doing.
Yeah, it's interesting that they kind of approach this from the automotive industry, because this is really the one, I think, there's a lot of industries, of course, where supply chain is very important. Within the auto industry, it's very, very important.
Yeah, I mean,
and
nothing but supply chain.
Nothing but supply chain, really. And I think that what Infinity QS is saying here, and what we're seeing, we're understanding, is this idea that, as you mentioned, it's a different environment than it was a few decades ago. The lengthening supply chains, the reliance on supply chains, means that if you want to improve the quality of your organization, you need to think way beyond your four walls. You really need to be looking at it kind of as a gestalt, and looking at everything that's going on in your manufacturing process, which especially with regard to automotive manufacturers, involves a supply chain. So yeah, Infinity QS is a software manufacturer. What they're talking about, though, is kind of a broader sense of quality and how it impacts, eventually how it impacts your customers, because you have to own that yourself internally if you're an OEM. Right. So it goes back to this idea that big data, controlling data, understanding data, and being able to be actionable within it really is the name of the game now, I think, for manufacturers, in any industry, but I think especially automotive more than anything else.
Yeah, and technology really lets you do that.
Lets you do that, no question. Okay, great. Well, also the news this week, the American National Standards Institute is seeking participants to work on sustainable development and urban infrastructure, two very important elements. This opportunity comes through sitting on ANSI accredited technical advisory groups, for ISO's Technical Committee 268 on Sustainable Development in Communities, and that TC's Subcommittee 1 on Smart Urban Infrastructure Metrics. TC 268 and SC 1 are currently developing international standards to address these very topics. TC 268 is responsible for creating management system requirements for sustainable development, as well as related guidance and techniques intended to support the increased resilience and sustainability of communities. SC1, on the other hand, oversees the development of ISO standards regarding so-called smart communities, their infrastructures and metrics, including general principles and requirements, along with the framework for their development and operation. So individual U.S. stakeholders with relevant experience in sustainability and planning are encouraged to get involved. Like all work on ISO standards, such involvement is integral to the success of these standards. And within the framework of this standard here that they're developing, it's very important because it's a very specialized skill. But really, all ISO standards, all standards that have technical committees and tags, technical advisory groups, ISO standards that do that, need to really involve the users, because those are the ones that understand how the standards are going to be used. They're the ones that can see what needs to be addressed, what documentation you need to make sure that whatever it is you want to standardize and have a standard for, especially a new standard, it really is going to work in the field. Many times in the past, I think there was a sense that these standards were put out there as kind of guidance or targets to be hit, and people would get it once it came out as a standard, and they'd say, this is no relevance to what we actually do for a living. So now, again, ANSI is saying, yes, if you're involved in this, please get involved. Reach out to us at ANSI.org and let us know, if you want to join the Technical Advisory Committee, because we can really then begin to form a standard or standards in this case that makes sense for the people that are going to be doing that work within those industries. Very important. So for more information about how to get involved, again, visit ANSI.org or click on the story link just below this video player screen. In fact, as always, as you know, all the pieces that Dirk and I are going to be covering on today's show are available right about down there, so check it out.
Down there. Okay. When it comes to choosing something, products, vendors, or whatever, people, customers, generally employ one reason decision making, call it gut thinking. And for instance, an example of that might be voting along party lines. You don't a lot of people don't necessarily think and weigh the issues necessarily. You're a Democrat, you vote Democrat. You're a Republican, you vote Republican. And a lot of this is just kind of gut. And this is not really because we're lazy. I mean, there might be some evolutionary reasons for this. When faced with danger, for instance, in the past, it might not make sense to pontificate on whether to fight the saber-toothed tiger or to run from it. Not that with a saber-tooth, it would make a heck of a lot of difference either way. But basically, we're kind of hardwired for quick decision-making. Yes. A variation of the one reason decision-making is waterfall or sequential decision making. In this case, if choosing between two products, for instance, your first gut choice might be based on, I don't know, let's say cost. And if both products cost the same, then that's a wash. So then maybe your next gut reason is to choose one over the other based on color and so forth. That's sequential decision making. And basically, we're all wired this way. As customers, you almost have to make a conscious effort not to go by gut reaction. So why is this important? Well, if you're trying to listen to your customers in order to gather data about a new product design, it helps to know how they make decisions. It helps you to know that most people do make gut decisions. It can help us sense and simplify the use of the voice of the customer. This is the subject of an article this week by Alan Nickel, Connecting Customers' Decisions to Design Decisions. It works like this. Everybody has their own one good reason for why they choose a particular product. Like we said, it could be color, it could be brand name, it could be anything. And that reason can be different for different people because people are different and their needs are different. If you try to take all of that voice of the customer data and use all that data in a product design, you end up on a design path that is trying to be everything to everybody. It's a bad choice. Not that you can't necessarily do it, but you're probably going to price yourself out of the market. Yeah. We don't need or want to build one product to satisfy the entire market, says Nickel. We want to choose one good reason why a significant part of the market desires the product and build it for those customers because the product answers their one good reason the best. Look at a smartphone, for instance. You have smartphones. We choose them for different reasons. Some customers choose the phone with the largest viewing screen, while others prefer something maybe that fits more easily in a pocket or might be based on voice command functions, or others might choose it based on compatibility with other devices. Nickel says this. He's got this great quote. He says, "Successful capture of customer delight comes from meeting each customer's one good reason better than our competitors. To do this, we must change the order in which we make our own design decisions. We must stop trying to let our voice of the customer tell us what product strategy to follow, and instead, we must first decide on a product strategy and then resolve our voice of the customer." So, what do I mean by this? How many of you, or all of us for that matter, have collected customer requirements, surveyed our customers and all this, and then decided our design strategy? That's backwards, says Nickel. He gives a good example. He uses a new computer design as an example. So first, you have to decide what part of the computer market you're going to target, right? Are you after gamers, or are you after home users, or graphic designers, or telecommuters? Once you know that, now you start collecting your voice of the customer data. You might start off simply by asking these two questions. You might ask, how much do you plan to pay for your next computer? And what will you use your next personal computer for the most? Home office, games, email, social media, basic computing, or other. Now you can correlate your other questions to those two questions and zero in on what is important to the particular subgroup that you are targeting, telecommuters, for instance. So now you start asking pairwise questions to identify what is important to each of those subgroups. So for instance, you might ask, what is more important to you, large screen size or portability? You give them just two choices, right? What is more important to you, processing power or battery life? Again, you're forcing them to make a decision on what is important. And you do this and so forth, right? In the end, you have a set of data which you can use to correlate to your market subgroup. Like I said, telecommuters. So upshot, if you decide first who you need to reach, and then ask questions to make sure you know who out of your respondents to customer surveys or focus groups matches the demographic that you want to reach, then the more you understand the needs of that group. And then after that, you design your questions to kind of zero in on what that particular subgroup needs. So interesting.
That's great. I mean,
and we do it backwards.
We do, and it's really great. Actually, it's a it's a perspective that I didn't really think about. The voice of the customer takes you so far, but really what you need to really properly adjust the voice of the customer is the ears of the manufacturer. Right. You need to. What I'm saying is, you need to hear. You need to really be able to tune into what you're trying to find out. If you're just saying voice of the customer, whatever you say, we're going to try to adapt to. As I say, it's not very cost effective. You're not going to really be able to develop a product based on that. But if you can first begin to pare down what it is you really want to know. And so then the voice of the customer is much more controlled. You're forcing them to those decision deltas to say, okay, I want A or B. And now you can say, okay, they really want A.
Right.
Or they really don't want B, and we can go down that other path.
And you're doing that for each subgroup, and you know which subgroup you're going for because you've already asked them, what kind of customer are you?
Yeah, but if you just
don't
say,
do that,
what do you want?
Yeah, you're going to get everything.
You're going to get everything, and then you're going to be saying, all right, well, we think, well, you're still going to be on a gut. You're going to say, well, we think we want this, we maybe want that, and we're going to develop something that may or may not work. Maybe you'll get lucky and it'll hit, maybe you won't, and it won't, and then you got to start from scratch or with a big loss. So really good advice there by Alan. I like that article. That's a good one. So read it out if you haven't checked it out. Make sure you, again, check it out. All the articles are below the video screen right down there. Okay, here's another topic that I don't think we can ever think too much about, and we talk about it a lot here. It's the nature of leadership. And that's the concern at the heart of the latest column from our frequent columnist, Aaron Hariharan, titled, "Are You a Honeymoon CEO?" which appeared in Monday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. I like this article. Aaron always has a nice, easy kind of approach to things, and he presents ideas that they're very easily digestible from all of us, and even I understood it, so you know it's easy. In this piece, Hariharan describes the three kinds of CEOs, and the first is the eponymous honeymoon CEO that he mentions, who sweeps in just when a company is new or has had some major changes, and during what's known as the honeymoon phase, we all know that if we're married, when everyone is optimistic about everything, the CEO makes a lot of promises, but never has to draw on the checks that are figuratively and often actually literally written. When that time comes, when the checks are due, the honeymoon CEO is usually shown the door. I mean, we know what happens. You know, you have a person that has a big personality, comes in with a new company or a company that maybe has decayed and is reforming, and that person is very charismatic and makes a lot of promises, wants to spend a lot of money, because you know at the beginning of something when the investors are optimistic, or they're optimistic because you're reformulating yourself, they're going to say, go for it, you know, we're going to spend money in this, we're going to hire these people, we're going to open a branch office, whatever we're going to do to improve long term. And there's a place for that, I'm going to get to that, but many times what happens is, again, that person, through force of personality, makes a lot of promises that aren't often kept and eventually is shown the door. Next comes the second type of CEO, and usually this does happen sequentially, as you can see logically, and this is the cost cutter CEO, who has to clean up the messes often left by his or her predecessor. Deep and sometimes often very painful cuts like the ones pushed forward from this CEO can help reverse the damage done by the honeymoon CEO, but it's rarely a recipe for long-term success. What I mean by that is that person has to come in, then he or she, and has to reformulate the company again. This is usually a couple of years after the honeymoon CEO was started. And there's a lot of damage, a lot of debts that have been rung up, and the company's maybe on the wrong track again. Now, this cost cutter CEO is going to come in and cut everything out, right? They're going to maybe get rid of headcount, they're going to maybe get rid of some offices, they're going to stop some product design work. And in the short term, that's often very successful. Oftentimes, if a company has really spent a lot of money and hasn't seen a lot of returns, stanching that flow of cash really is good. Investors love it usually, and you usually see an uptick in the company, but of course, that's not a long-term recipe for success either. So, finally, we come to the what Arun refers to as the institution builder CEO, which of course is the one that we all want to be, or at least work for. That is a leader who walks that fine line between intelligent investment and restraint, who always seems to know when to focus on the short, the intermediate, or the long term. This person comes in and has seen what's happened with the honeymoon CEO, seen what happened with the cost-cutting CEO, and says, okay, there's a time to spend, there's a time to cut. We need to look at this intelligently and make decisions, not with a broad brush, but individually, and say, okay, well, maybe we do need to spend more on that, invest in this. Maybe we need to cut here and save money there. So it's not an all or one kind of thing like the first two types. In truth, I think most top managers have been any one, if not all three, of these CEOs at various points in their careers, and that's just fine as far as I'm concerned. Even the honeymoon CEO has some advantages. Sometimes at the beginning of a venture, as I mentioned, you need someone to step up and try things, make investments, and maybe fail forward quickly, as we say. And that happens maybe more often than it's comfortable, but it is where the seeds of knowledge and growth come from, right? I mean, you're going to find out stuff by failing. We know that. We've seen this from Silicon Valley many, many times. You fail quickly, hopefully you get up and you start again. So the honeymoon CEO, which I think is the one that Arun in his piece is kind of knocking the most here, right, has a lot of advantages too.
And so a lot of times the honeymoon CEO also kind of motivates the troops.
Sure.
You know, it's exciting. You know, it's
exactly right. And you know, throughout the process of that, you know, you think about an organization that's gone through all three of these CEOs maybe in 5 or 8 years, and you know, you can see people being whipsawed around, but the optimism that's instilled at the beginning by the Honeymoon CEO and the discipline that's instilled by the second cost-cutting CEO generally comes to fruition under the watch of the legacy CEO, right? The institution builder, the one who's going to take all that and hopefully have the veteran people there that have been through the wars with that and have both angles of that, have the discipline, have the optimism, and now you can put those things together and you can have hopefully a great organization that's going to last for ages.
Yep.
And that's really
interesting. Arun's good.
Arun is really good. If you haven't read his stuff, check out Arun Hariharan. Really good author of ours. We like his stuff. All right. Well, before we close the show, we got a really good tech corner for you. And as we normally do, we have Dirk joining us, Dirk joining Rob Bellinger of Olympus. They're going to look at a new release of the Olympus Stream software and the DP22 microscope camera. So guys, take it away.
Thanks. Well, Rob, thanks again for joining us. Again, Rob Bellinger from Olympus. He's on our show about once a month, seems like. So what are we looking at today?
So I had brought in today a expected new release of the Stream software. This is version 1.9.2. A lot of under the hood increases in capabilities for some of our solution modules. I'm going to point out a couple new features that are in this software release.
Now the Stream software, we've looked at this before, so this is more some new improvements to it.
Yep, this is our analytical software package we've had for several years, and this is a new release. They've added some new features and added some new capabilities and solution modules. So today I have the separate objects filter to show. This is a new filter that has been launched for improvement of grains analysis. So in the past, it's been very difficult on grains analysis to define some of the weaker borders that are faint. And maybe this is due to polishing techniques or just the sample surface itself. With this new separate objects filter, we can improve contrast of the object border, the grain boundaries.
Right.
So if you look on the left screen here, this is the original image. You can see a pretty weak boundary here. And on the right side on the preview, after the filter's been applied, you see that it darkens and contrasts out.
So it's kind of a form of edge enhancement, really. It's looking for those boundaries and trying to pop them out. Right?
Yes, get a little bit more contrast on them, separate them out just a little bit more. So the software can then repeatedly count those weaker edges and boundary lines to give a better representation of grain size numbers.
Why is that important? What was the issue in the past?
So the issue in the past, if you missed a boundary, you could double size grains and give you a larger grain size number, saying that your sample could be a weaker sample or something of that nature. So now with the more defined grain boundaries, you're getting more realistic grain sizing and numbers. And
what's grain sizing used for? What industries use that?
Well, it's definitely metallurgical. It's going to be for any kind of metals like aluminum, steel, or brass type metals.
So the grain size gives them an indication of strength or tensile strength?
Indication of tensile strength, indication of maybe merging of two different materials in an area, and the grains will merge and they'll want to size on one side of the merge and on the other to know the strength of that merge. But the boundaries is what's most important, and those being more contrast can help define and size those grain numbers much better. So we'll hit OK and apply this, and you'll see the overall image after a second here improve with a lot more contrast overall. So that's one of the new features, the separate objects filter. This can be applied and then ran through our grains intercept solution module to count and size the grain boundaries. One of the other major improvements, in my opinion, was a simple interface. We have a new tool window interface here.
I was going to say, your old interface, if I remember, it was a toolbar that ran across the top.
Had lots of toolbars across the top if you wanted them to be there.
Which it was still pretty straightforward, the older version.
It was. Yeah. This way we can use this, it's selectable tool window if you want to have it and set up your own interface like this. This tool window brings out some of the most common used buttons. To make it very simple, they're a little bit larger, easier to read, so somebody can walk up quickly and interface with the system. So you have turn on the live image, you can see a live image come on the screen. You can activate autofocus with a single click in this window, quickly autofocus your image. After that's done, you have all of your magnification selections right here in the tool window. Down below this, you have the ability to put text boxes and that kind of pointers and drawings on the surface of the image.
So this is you could annotate. That's prior to, I guess, saving it out as a document or something?
Exactly.
Okay.
So if you wanted to put a text box in the top right corner of the image and type in some information, or put pointers to specific details on your image. Another thing that's useful is measurements. You can take area or simple point-to-point measurements. So if you come out here and wanted to take a quick, simple point-to-point measurement on your sample, all these buttons are now very easily accessed right here. You don't have the complexity that's underneath all the other windows that we had before. All that stuff's still there, and you can still have an advanced interface with all those windows.
I was going to ask you, can you modify just choosing which buttons might be available to an operator, or that sort of thing?
So in this window, you have the basic buttons that are predefined,
Okay.
but you can also take our software and customize
Okay.
all the other windows and
Gotcha.
buttons however you'd like. So options of drawing and adjusting some of the line widths and stuff are right here at the fingertips in this new tool window as well. Another thing that I've brought in to show is a new camera that we'll be launching.
Okay.
This is the DP22 that I have on the system.
And maybe if we can get a shot of this, guys. This is, I'm assuming this is the camera up on top here.
Yes, that's correct. So this is the DP22 is a CCD microscope camera. It's a 3 megapixel for this model, and it's a USB 3.0. The camera has incredible color rendering in the software. It also has a very fast refresh rate, and I'm hoping that comes across through
Yeah,
the
if you're looking at this on the screen, this is moving very smooth. We're using a desktop sharing, so it may not look as smooth for the viewers as what I'm seeing here, but this is a very small movement as you're tracking with the joystick.
The point is, with the high bandwidth and the fast refresh rate of the cameras, you can do live imaging on the screen, and you don't have a delay or hysteresis or anything left over on the screen. True color representation. The DP22 is the 3 megapixel version. We're also launching a DP27. That'll be a 5 megapixel CCD USB 3.0 camera as well. And all of those will be controlled through the Olympus Stream software.
Okay. We have a couple more minutes here. Sure. Even though you're not able to maybe show them to us, name some of the other upgrades. We looked at simplified interface,
Sure.
Enhanced optimizing grain boundaries, right?
Grain boundaries,
What are
yes.
some of the other options?
Some of the other options, like back in our processing, when you look at grains planimetric, they've applied that new separate objects filter into the solution modules.
Okay.
That's a new improvement. Some of the other add-ons would be adding, instead of just metric, they've added standard measurements
Okay.
for inches in the layer thickness solution module. Whole lot of improvements behind the background in the software to increase usability in the solution modules.
And typically, as we said, this setup is materials analysis. Is that?
Material, a lot of it, yeah, especially with our solution modules, it's geared towards materials. So cast iron and metals and grains analysis. But we also have a lot of cleanliness inspection through quality assurance for particle and
particle
grain,
count, that sort of
particle
thing. Okay.
counting, cleanliness counting, particle distribution. We have some abilities now with solution modules for some auto measurements, so people that need to do repetitive measurements with the motorized stage driving to points, the software can do auto measure based on kind of a macro view of a display on the part. It'll auto detect that pattern and take measurements with scanners. So a lot of those solutions go into quality assurance, material science, and even manufacturing.
Okay. All right. Well, Rob, thanks again. So again, this
thank you,
was the Olympus Stream revision 1.9.2.
192, yes.
And the DP22 microscope camera.
DP22 USB 3.0 microscope camera.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rob. Back to you, Mike.
Thanks.
Well, there you have it. Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Dirk, for showing us the new version of the Olympus Stream software and again the DP22 microscope camera from Rob Bellinger and Dirk Ducharme. Good tech one there.
Yeah,
Dirk.
fun.
And
Yep.
Rob always does a great job. We always appreciate
Just up the
that.
road.
That's right, just up the road. So, Rob, thanks for joining us. Well, that's our show for the week. But before we go, we'd like to thank this week's sponsor, the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program. Imagine working side by side with a team of Baldrige experts to collaboratively assess your organization and identify your strengths and opportunities for improvement. Minimal preparation is required, every assessment is customizable, and all assessments provide immediate actionable feedback to improve your organization's performance. Learn more about the Baldrige Collaborative Assessment today at the Baldrige website, or just click on the banner ad just below, or just to the right, as always, of this video player screen.
That's right. And thanks again to all of you for joining us, and also to Rob Bellinger from Olympus for bringing by some new software and hardware for us to look at.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend.
That's it. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next week.
So long.
Bye.